The applause lasted 7 minutes. Ambassador David Okonkwo stood at the center of the Galactic Assembly, his dark hands folded in front of him, his white hair catching the light of 3 distant suns streaming through the observation dome. He was 73 years old. He had spent 40 of those years learning to smile when others insulted him, to speak softly when others shouted, and to wait when others rushed. Today, that patience had paid off. The trade agreement was signed. After 60 years of being denied access to faster-than-light fuel refineries, humanity would finally stand equal among the stars. The Selvari had voted yes. The Drenith had voted yes. Even the mysterious Hollow Kin had raised their shadowy appendages in approval. The Triumvirate, the 3 elder species who had controlled the galaxy for 10,000 years, had lost. High Speaker Morath of the Kethvari did not applaud. His 4 eyes watched Okonkwo with something cold and ancient. But the old ambassador simply nodded to him with respect, as he did to everyone. That was who David Okonkwo was. Later in the human embassy wing, Okonkwo sat with his aide Rilla. She was Selvari, covered in soft blue feathers with golden eyes that blinked sideways. She had served him for 12 years. "You should rest," she said, pushing a bowl of fruit toward him. "You have done something historic today." Okonkwo laughed softly. "Historic? I just talked to people, Rilla. That is all diplomacy is, talking and listening." "The Triumvirate does not listen." "No," he agreed. "They have forgotten how. When you rule for 10,000 years, you forget that others have voices too." They ate in comfortable silence. The embassy was quiet. Captain Hannah Webb and her small security team patrolled the corridors outside, but there was no tension. This was neutral ground, sacred ground. "My granddaughter sent me a message," Okonkwo said. "She is learning to read. She wanted to know if there are alien children who also struggle with the letter R." Rilla made a chirping sound, her version of a laugh. "Tell her yes. The Drenith young cannot pronounce the letter K until they are 10 years old." "She will love that." A soft chime announced a delivery. Captain Webb entered, carrying a crystalline sculpture about the size of a human head. It glowed faintly from within, blues and greens swirling like a tiny ocean. "Gift from the Selvari delegation," Webb said. "Scan clean. No electronics, no toxins, no radiation." Okonkwo examined it with genuine appreciation. "Beautiful. The Selvari do love their art." "I did not know we sent this," Rilla said, her feathers rising slightly. "Let me contact my people to confirm." "I am sure it is nothing to worry about." Okonkwo reached out and touched the sculpture. The reaction was instant. The crystal pulsed once, releasing a mist so fine it was nearly invisible. Okonkwo inhaled sharply, then stumbled. Webb caught him, shouting into her communicator. Rilla screamed, a high, terrible sound that echoed through the corridors. "Poison," Webb said, her voice cracking. "Medical team now." But there was no time. The toxin had been engineered specifically for human biology. It worked in seconds, shutting down the nervous system with terrible precision. Okonkwo's legs gave out. His breathing slowed. Rilla held him, her feathers pressed against his face, her golden eyes wide with horror. "David," she whispered, "David, stay with me." He looked up at her. His eyes were still kind, even now. "Tell them," he said, his voice barely a breath. "Tell them, do not let this undo everything." Then he was gone. The news reached Earth 17 minutes later. In Geneva, the United Earth Council fell silent. In Lagos, millions stopped in the streets as the broadcast cut into every channel. In Beijing, children asked their parents why the adults were crying. Ambassador David Okonkwo, the man who had spent his life building bridges, was dead. In the Great Hall of the United Nations, no one spoke. The flags of every Earth nation hung motionless. The screens showed his face, frozen in that last gentle smile from his final speech. Secretary General Amara Diallo stood at the podium. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and silver braids. She had known Okonkwo for 30 years. He had taught her that anger was a tool, not a master. She looked at the faces before her, presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists. They waited for her to speak. They waited for rage, for tears, for a call to war. She gave them none of these. "We have received confirmation," she said, her voice flat and controlled. Ambassador Okonkwo was assassinated by a toxin designed specifically to kill humans. The delivery mechanism was disguised as a gift from our allies. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "We do not yet know who is responsible. We will find out," she paused. "Until then, humanity will be silent. No threats, no accusations, no demands. Just silence." And across the galaxy, species who had watched humans for a century suddenly felt something they had never felt before. Fear, because every species responded to violence with noise, with screams and threats and immediate retaliation. Humanity responded with nothing. And nothing, they would soon learn, was far more terrifying. 3 days after the assassination, a Drenith merchant captain made a routine stop at Station 14 to pick up human medical supplies. He found the station empty. The lights were on. The cargo was packed and ready, but every human was gone. He reported this to his superiors, who dismissed it as strange but unimportant. By the end of the week, they understood. Humanity was vanishing. Merchant ships returned to Earth space and did not come back out. Colonies went dark, their communication arrays powered down. Scientists abandoned joint research projects without explanation. Teachers left alien universities mid-semester. Doctors finished their current patients and then quietly packed their bags. No announcements, no explanations, just absence. On Galactic Concord Station, High Speaker Morath called an emergency session of the Assembly. "This behavior is irrational," he declared, his 4 eyes scanning the gathered delegates. "Humanity has suffered a loss, yes, but to withdraw completely, this is the response of children, not a civilized species." The Selvari ambassador stood. "Perhaps they grieve differently than we do." "Grief does not shut down an entire economy." Morath's voice dripped with contempt. "They are trying to manipulate us, to make us feel guilty for a crime we did not commit." "Did we not?" The question came from the Drenith delegation. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. Morath ignored it. "The Triumvirate offers to conduct a full investigation. We will find the criminals responsible and deliver them to justice." He spoke as if this settled matters, as if his words were law. On Earth, Secretary General Diallo watched the broadcast from her office in Geneva. Admiral Yuki Tanaka sat across from her, a tablet in her hands showing fleet positions. "They think we are throwing a tantrum," Tanaka said. "Let them think that." Diallo turned away from the screen. "What is the status of our intelligence networks?" "Fully activated. We have assets in 14 systems, including 3 agents embedded within triumvirate military installations." Diallo nodded slowly. 60 years. We spent 60 years building those networks while they laughed at us, called us primitive, said we were too young to understand galactic politics. "They never looked twice at a human servant," Tanaka agreed, "or a human translator, or a human maintenance worker. Because they could not imagine we were capable of patience." Diallo's eyes hardened. "Pull back the fleet. Every ship returns to Earth space. I want our borders sealed." Tanaka hesitated. "That will cause panic among the other species. Human goods flow through half the galaxy. Medicine, food supplements, entertainment media. I know. Worlds will start to suffer within weeks." "I know." Tanaka studied her commander. "You want them to suffer." "I want them to understand." Diallo stood and walked to the window. Below, Geneva carried on, people walking, children playing, life continuing even in grief. David Okonkwo spent 40 years teaching the galaxy that humans were kind, reasonable, safe. She turned back to face Tanaka. Now they need to learn that kindness was a choice, and choices can change. On Galactic Concord Station, Rilla sat in a small room surrounded by human security officers. She had not slept in 3 days. Her feathers were dull and matted. Her golden eyes were empty. Captain Webb entered and sat across from her. "We need to ask you some questions." "I have already told you everything." "Tell me again, the sculpture who delivered it." Rilla closed her eyes. "A servant, Kethvari, young, she said it was a gift from my people." "But your people did not send it." "No, I contacted the Selvari delegation. They had no record of any gift." Webb leaned forward. "So a Kethvari servant delivered a package that was falsely labeled as Selvari, and that package contained a toxin engineered specifically to kill humans." Rilla's feathers rose slightly. "You think the triumvirate?" "I do not think anything yet. I am gathering facts." But they both knew. The shape of the truth was already forming, ugly and undeniable. In the following days, pieces began falling into place. Human intelligence operatives across the galaxy reported back. The toxin's genetic markers matched samples from a Kethvari military laboratory. Communication intercepts revealed coordination between triumvirate security chiefs in the weeks before the assassination. Financial records showed unusual payments to Hollow-kin assassin guilds. Director Samuel Adami, head of Earth Intelligence, compiled everything into a single file. He was a quiet man, former field agent, with scars on his hands from operations he never discussed. He delivered the file to Secretary General Diallo personally. She read it in silence. Her expression did not change. "This is enough," she said finally. "Enough for what?" She looked up at him. "Enough to make them answer for what they did." "What are you going to do?" Diallo stood and straightened her jacket. "First, I am going to tell the truth. Then I am going to show the galaxy what happens when you mistake human kindness for human weakness." She walked to the door, then paused. "Convene the War Cabinet and contact our allies in the Assembly, the Selvari, the Drenith, anyone who voted with us." "You are building a coalition." "No," her voice was ice. "I am giving them a chance to stand clear before the storm." Adami watched her go. He had served Earth for 30 years and had seen many leaders face many crises. None had ever frightened him quite like this. Agent Lena Voronova had lived among the Kethvari for 11 years. She had learned their language, their customs, their arrogance. She had cleaned their floors, served their meals, and smiled at their jokes about primitive humans. She had memorized every insult. Now she was running through the back corridors of a Kethvari military complex with a terrified aristocrat and enough evidence to shake the galaxy. "This way," she whispered, pulling Counselor Dreth through a maintenance hatch. "The shuttle is 3 levels down." Dreth was shaking. He was Kethvari, tall, four-eyed, covered in scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now they were pale gray, the color of fear. "They will kill me," he said, "when they discover I helped you." "They will kill you anyway, you know too much." Voronova sealed the hatch behind them. "You have been feeding us information for years. Did you think that would stay secret forever?" Dreth made a sound like grinding stones, the Kethvari equivalent of bitter laughter. "I thought I was being clever, playing both sides, but when they killed the ambassador, you grew a conscience. I realized they would do the same to anyone, even their own people." They reached the shuttle bay. Voronova had disabled the security cameras 6 hours ago. A small human vessel waited, unmarked and unremarkable. "Get in," she said. "Do not speak until we reach Earth space." Dreth hesitated at the door. "Why did you do this? Spend 11 years of your life pretending to be nothing?" Voronova looked at him. Her eyes were cold. "Because you thought we were nothing, and that made you careless." 2 days later, Counselor Dreth sat in an underground facility in Buenos Aires, surrounded by human intelligence officers. Director Adami watched from behind a one-way mirror as the Kethvari spilled everything. The assassination had been planned for months. The Triumvirate's inner council had authorized it directly. They saw humanity's rising influence as an existential threat, not because humans were dangerous, but because humans were popular. The younger species liked humanity. They traded fairly. They shared technology without demanding tribute. They treated everyone as equals, regardless of how long their civilization had existed. This was unacceptable to the triumvirate. The elder species had spent 10,000 years building a hierarchy with themselves at the top. Humanity was dismantling it simply by being decent. So they decided to send a message. The toxin was engineered in Laboratory 7 on the Kethvari homeworld, Dreth explained, his voice flat. The delivery system was designed by Hollow Kin specialists. The timing was approved by the Dreneth Patriarch himself. All 3 species were involved, Ademi confirmed. All 3, they saw Ambassador Okonkwo as the heart of human diplomacy. They believed that killing him would break human morale and destroy the trade agreement. They were wrong. Yes, Dreth's scales shifted to a darker shade. They were very wrong. Secretary General Diallo received the complete file that evening. She read it twice, memorizing every detail. Then she contacted the Galactic Assembly and requested an emergency session. "What will you say?" Admiral Tanaka asked. "The truth, nothing more, nothing less. And if they do not believe us..." Diallo's expression did not change. "They will believe us. We have confessions from 3 triumvirate operatives, genetic analysis of the toxin, communication intercepts spanning 6 months, and financial records proving payment to assassin guilds. The triumvirate will claim it is fabricated. Let them claim whatever they want. The evidence speaks for itself." The assembly chamber was packed. Species from across the galaxy watched as the human delegation entered, small, quiet, carrying nothing but data tablets. High Speaker Morath smiled with all 4 of his eyes. "Secretary General, we are sorry for your loss. Perhaps now you are ready to accept our offer of a joint investigation." Diallo walked to the central podium. She did not acknowledge him. "Members of the Assembly," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I am not here to accuse, I am not here to demand, I am here to present facts." She activated her tablet. Holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, documents, recordings, biological analyses. The evidence unfolded piece by piece, undeniable and complete. The chamber fell silent. By the time she finished, the Selvari delegation was on their feet, feathers raised in fury. The Dreneth were arguing among themselves. Smaller species who had feared the triumvirate for millennia were whispering to each other, their eyes bright with something that looked almost like hope. High Speaker Morath stood. His scales had gone dark with anger. "This is absurd," he declared. "Fabrications created by a grieving species. Humanity is young and emotional. They do not understand how the galaxy works." Diallo looked at him. Her expression was empty. "We are not here to argue," she said. "We are here to inform you of what comes next." She turned and walked toward the exit. The entire human delegation rose and followed. "You cannot simply leave," Morath shouted. "This is the Galactic Assembly. You will face consequences for this insult." Diallo paused at the door. She looked back at him one final time. Ambassador Okonkwo believed in this institution. He believed that if we presented truth with respect, we would receive justice in return. Her voice hardened. "I am not Ambassador Okonkwo." She left. The doors sealed behind her. And across the galaxy, humanity prepared for war. The fuel depot at Rithai's station had burned for 6 hours before anyone arrived to investigate. By then, all that remained was twisted metal and floating debris. No bodies. No survivors, no witnesses. Fleet Commander Sethais reviewed the damage report from his flagship, the Eternal Victory. His scales rippled with barely contained rage. "How," he demanded, "how did they even reach this system? Our patrols cover every approach vector." His aide shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the human vessels appear to have used the debris field around the outer moon as cover. They approached at minimum power, struck the depot, and vanished before our ships could respond." "Vanished where?" "Unknown, sir. We have found no trace of their exit trajectory. Sethais threw the data tablet across the room. It shattered against the wall. This was the 7th attack in 2 weeks. Fuel depots, communication relays, construction drones, cargo warehouses, nothing critical, nothing irreplaceable, but the cumulative effect was devastating. The triumvirate's logistical network was bleeding from 1,000 small cuts. And they could not stop it. Admiral Yuki Tanaka reviewed the same battle reports from her command center on Luna. Unlike Sethai's, she was calm, almost serene. The Rethai's strike was clean, Captain Omar Hassan reported. No casualties on either side. The crew evacuated before the charges detonated. Good, Tanaka scrolled through the data. What about the convoy intercepts? 17 triumvirate merchant vessels detained in the past 3 days. Cargo impounded for inspection. All crews released unharmed. Excellent. Hassan hesitated. Admiral, permission to speak freely. Granted. The crews are starting to ask questions. They want to know why we are not fighting back properly. We have the ships. We have the weapons. The triumvirate murdered our ambassador and we are impounding cargo. Tanaka looked up at him. Hassan was young, barely 30. He had grown up watching humanity struggle for respect among the stars. He wanted justice. He wanted revenge. She understood. Captain, do you know how many ships the HFY War fleet has? 700 approximately. And how many do we have? Hassan's jaw tightened. 43 combat ready. 43? Tanaka stood and walked to the observation window. Below, Earth hung in the darkness, blue and beautiful and fragile. If we meet them in open battle, we lose. It does not matter how brave we are, how skilled we are. 700 to 43. Mathematics does not care about courage. So we do nothing. We do everything except what they expect. She turned to face him. The triumvirate has never fought a real war. They have crushed rebellions. They have intimidated smaller species. But they have never faced an enemy who refuses to play by their rules. What rules? The rules that say you must meet force with force, that you must defend every position, that. Victory means destroying your enemy's fleet. Tanaka smiled slightly. We are not trying to destroy their fleet, Captain. We are trying to destroy their confidence. Across the galaxy, the effects were becoming impossible to ignore. HFY merchants could not move cargo without human interference. Shipments that once took days now took weeks. Prices rose, shortages began. The Drenith economy, built on trade, started to buckle. Their people had never known scarcity. They complained loudly to their leaders who had no answers. Even the hollow kin, hidden in their distant nebula, felt the pressure. Human ships patrolled their trade routes now, inspecting every vessel that passed. High Speaker Marath called for war. Real war, total war. Mobilize the fleet, he commanded. Every ship, every soldier, we will crush these humans and remind the galaxy who rules the stars. His generals obeyed. 700 HFY warships assembled, the largest military force seen in 1,000 years. They moved toward human space in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Tanaka watched them come. Contact all human vessels, she ordered. Begin Protocol Shadow. The human fleet did not engage. They scattered, breaking into small groups of 2 or 3 ships. They slipped through the gaps in the HFY formation. They appeared behind supply convoys, struck quickly, and disappeared. Fleet Commander Sethais chased ghosts. Every time he cornered a human squadron, they vanished into asteroid fields or nebula clouds. Every time he protected one target, 3 others were hit. They will not stand and fight, he raged. This is cowardice. His aide said nothing, but privately he wondered if cowardice was the right word. The humans seemed to know exactly where the HFY fleet would be, often hours before they arrived. They anticipated patrol routes. They predicted resupply schedules. They appeared and disappeared like spirits. After 3 weeks of fruitless pursuit, Sethais received a message from an unexpected source. It came from something ancient, an artificial intelligence that had existed since before the Triumvirate. The galaxy called it the Watcher. It observed conflicts but never intervened. Until now. The message was short: "You are not fighting prey." Sethais read it 3 times, trying to understand. On Luna, Admiral Tanaka received the same message. She read it once, nodded, and returned to her work. She knew exactly what it meant. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time. For the first time in living memory, the lights flickered on the Kethvari homeworld. Power rationing. The words had never been spoken in the capital before. The elder species had enjoyed unlimited energy for 10,000 years. Now, because human raiders had destroyed 17 fuel processing stations, citizens were being asked to conserve. High Speaker Morath stood before his council, watching the faces of beings who had never known hardship. They were angry, they were confused, they were afraid. "This cannot continue," Councillor Veth said, her scales pale with stress. "Our people are rioting in the outer districts. They demand answers we cannot give." "Then we give them victory," Morath replied. "We destroy the human homeworld and end this." Silence fell across the chamber. "That would require passing through their defensive perimeter," General Koth said carefully. "Our fleet has been unable to engage their ships directly. They simply disappear. Then we bypass their ships entirely, strike Earth itself. Without their homeworld, they have nothing." "And if we fail?" Morath's 4 eyes narrowed. "We will not fail. Assemble the strike force, every available warship. We end this in one blow." On Earth, Secretary General Diallo received word of the incoming fleet 3 days before it launched. Human intelligence networks had penetrated every level of Triumvirate command. There were no secrets anymore. "New Adelaide," she said, reading the target coordinates. "A colony of 60,000. Admiral Tanaka nodded. "They are bypassing our main defenses to hit a civilian target. They want to break our morale." "Then we let them think they have succeeded." Diallo leaned back in her chair. "Evacuate New Adelaide, every man, woman, and child. Leave nothing but automated defenses. And then we show them what they have become." The evacuation took 48 hours. Human ships worked without rest, ferrying colonists to safe locations deeper in Earth space. By the time the Kethvari fleet arrived, New Adelaide was a ghost colony. Fleet Commander Sethais entered the system with 200 warships, expecting terror. He found silence. "Scan for life signs," he ordered. His sensor officer worked frantically. "None detected, sir. The colony appears to be empty." Empty, the word hung in the air. "They knew we were coming." Sethais felt cold spread through his scales. "They evacuated their people." Before he could order a retreat, New Adelaide's automated defenses activated. The planet's surface bristled with weapons platforms that had been hidden beneath residential districts, agricultural zones, and public parks. Missile silos opened. Energy cannons powered up. Orbital mines detonated in carefully sequenced patterns. 18 Kethvari warships were destroyed in the first 60 seconds. Sethais ordered an immediate withdrawal. His fleet fled the system in disarray, leaving debris and bodies behind. Humanity broadcast the battle footage to every species in the galaxy. No narration, no commentary, just the images, a triumvirate fleet attacking an empty civilian colony and being torn apart by defenses they never saw coming. 200 ships sent to murder 60,000 innocent people. 200 ships humiliated by automated weapons and their own arrogance. The message was clear. Humanity had known. Humanity had prepared. And humanity had chosen mercy, evacuating their people instead of sacrificing them for propaganda. The Triumvirate had chosen differently. On the Kethvari homeworld, the Council turned against High Speaker Morath. "You promised victory," Councillor Veth said. "You delivered disgrace. The humans tricked us. The humans outthought us. Another counselor stood, scales flushed dark with anger. Every step of this conflict, they have been ahead of us. They knew our plans before we made them. They anticipated our movements. They made us look like fools before the entire galaxy. And now we are weak, a third voice added. The Dreneth have withdrawn from our alliance. They say we are a liability. The Hollow-kin refuse to answer our communications. We stand alone. Morath looked around the chamber at faces that had once respected him. Now he saw only contempt. "What would you have me do?" he asked. "Request negotiations. The humans have offered terms." "Terms?" Morath laughed bitterly. "We are the Triumvirate. We do not negotiate with lesser species." "The Triumvirate is finished." Counselor Veth stepped forward. "As of this moment, you are removed from the position of High Speaker. The Council will pursue peace." Guards moved to escort Morath from the chamber. He did not resist. What would be the point? On Galactic Concord Station, Rilla stood before the full assembly. Her blue feathers had regained their shine. Her golden eyes were steady. "I served Ambassador David Okonkwo for 12 years, she said. "He was the kindest being I have ever known. He believed that peace was possible. He believed that all species could learn to respect each other." She paused, looking at the gathered delegates. The Triumvirate killed him because they feared what he represented. They thought that by removing him, they would break humanity. Her voice strengthened. They were wrong. Humanity did not break. They did not rage. They did not slaughter. They responded with precision, with patience, and with mercy. They evacuated their own people rather than let them become martyrs. She spread her wings slightly, a Selvari gesture of respect. Ambassador Okonkwo wanted peace. Humanity still does, but they will not be victims, not ever again. The assembly was silent. Then slowly the Selvari delegation began to applaud. The Dreneth joined them. Then dozens more species, rising to their feet, acknowledging what humanity had achieved. Not through violence, through something far more powerful. The treaty signing took place on neutral ground, a small station orbiting a star that belonged to no one. Representatives from 47 species attended. The former Triumvirate came with their heads bowed. Secretary General Diallo stood at the central podium, watching as the Kethvari delegation entered. They moved slowly, without the arrogance that had defined them for millennia. Their scales were dull. Their 4 eyes avoided contact with anyone. Counselor Veth approached the signing table. Behind her walked 3 figures in restraints, former High Speaker Morath and 2 of his closest advisors. "As agreed," Veth said quietly, "those responsible for the assassination of Ambassador David Okonkwo are surrendered to the Joint Tribunal." Diallo nodded. "They will receive a fair trial. That is more than they offered him." The treaty itself was simple. The Triumvirate admitted guilt. Reparations would be paid to the families of those affected. The individuals who planned and executed the assassination would face justice. But humanity asked for something else, something unexpected. "You are not demanding territory?" Veth seemed confused. "No colonies, no resources." "No." "Then what do you want?" Diallo looked at her steadily. "We want seats on every major galactic committee, equal voting rights in the Assembly, and the immediate dissolution of the Triumvirate's special privileges." Veth blinked all 4 eyes. "You want equality." "We have always wanted equality. Your people simply refused to grant it." The Kethvari counselor was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she signed the treaty. The Dreneth followed. Then, emerging from shadows, a representative of the Hollow-kin pressed their appendage to the document. It was done. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. They had expected humanity to demand revenge, to carve up triumvirate space, to establish their own empire on the ashes of the old order. Instead, humanity asked only to be treated as equals. Admiral Tanaka was not at the signing. She had returned to Earth, unwilling to be part of celebrations she did not feel she had earned. Captain Hassan found her at the Okonkwo Memorial on Luna. The structure was new, a simple pillar of white stone with the ambassador's face carved into it. Around the base, flowers and gifts from dozens of species had accumulated. "You should be there," Hassan said, standing beside her. "You led the campaign." The campaign led itself. Tanaka did not look away from the memorial. "The intelligence teams did the real work. Our ships simply followed their guidance." "That is not true, and you know it." Tanaka smiled slightly. "Perhaps, but I did not do this for medals, Captain. I did it because it needed to be done." They stood in silence for a while. "What do you think he would say?" Hassan asked. "The ambassador, if he could see what happened." Tanaka considered the question. "I think he would be sad that it came to this. He believed in talking, in patience, in giving others the chance to do the right thing. The triumvirate did not give him that chance." "No, they did not." She finally turned to face Hassan. "But we gave them the chance. At every step we offered them ways out. They chose to keep fighting. And we won. We survived. That is not quite the same thing." She looked back at the memorial. "Ambassador Okonkwo used to say that true strength was not in how hard you could hit, but in knowing when to stop hitting." "We stopped." "Yes, we stopped." Her voice softened. "And that is what made us worthy of what comes next." The assembly convened one final time before the delegations departed. There was one more piece of business, unexpected and unprecedented. A presence materialized at the center of the chamber, ancient. Vast the Watcher. No one had seen it appear in person for 10,000 years. Species who had lived their entire lives hearing stories about this entity now witnessed it directly, a shifting form of light and geometry that hurt to look at directly. "We have observed this conflict," the Watcher said. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have watched humanity since their first vessels left their homeworld." The assembly waited, barely breathing. They were tested as all species are tested. They faced an enemy more powerful than themselves. They suffered loss and betrayal. The Watcher's form shifted, focusing somehow on the human delegation. They fought without cruelty, they won without conquest, they grieved without breaking. A pause. "They are ready." Ready for what? No one dared to ask. The Watcher offered no explanation. But something had changed. The galaxy could feel it. Humanity was no longer the young species struggling for acceptance. They had proven something that went beyond military strength or economic power. They had proven their character. Rilla found the human delegation as they prepared to depart. She carried something in her clawed hands, a single blue feather from her own wing. "For the memorial," she said, offering it to Secretary General Diallo. "It is a Selvari tradition. When we lose someone we love, we give a part of ourselves to remember them by." Diallo accepted the feather gently. "Thank you, Rilla. He would have been honored." "He was my friend." Rilla's golden eyes glistened. "The best friend I ever had." Months later, on Luna, a young human girl visited the Okonkwo Memorial with her mother. She saw the blue feather resting at the base of the statue, preserved under glass. "What is that?" she asked. Her mother smiled. "It is a gift from one of his friends, a Selvari named Rilla." "Why did she give a feather?" "Because that is how her people show love, by giving a piece of themselves." The girl thought about this. He must have had good friends. "He did," her mother took her hand. "He had very good friends." They stood together in the soft light, looking up at the face of the man who had believed in peace. Above them, the stars stretched infinite and cold, but humanity no longer looked at those stars as strangers. They looked at them as equals. And somewhere David Okonkwo smiled.